Coming up on Global Business, an Australian business delegation is visiting China. We take a closer look at bilateral trade between the two countries. Swiss lender UBS said on Tuesday that it expects to complete the takeover of stricken rival Credit Suisse in the second quarter. China to replace PCR test requirement with antigen tests for inbound travelers. From CGTN headquarters in China, this is Global Business. I'm Michelle Vandenberg. We begin our program with a look at agricultural cooperation between China and the ASEAN. Chinese Premier Li Qiang on Tuesday emphasized the need to deepen collaboration between the two sides in food security and agriculture. Li said during the opening ceremony of an event on agricultural cooperation that policy exchanges, green development, and poverty alleviation are areas where China and ASEAN should further strengthen ties, while smart and digital agriculture are emerging areas for collaboration. A group of 15 senior executives from Australian companies and local government officials are currently on a 6-day trip to China, visiting some of the country's major industrial and commercial centers. Green energy collaboration and climate change concerns are among the topics on their agenda, making this the first government-backed delegation from Australia to China in 3 years. Shu Jueting, a spokesperson of the Ministry of Commerce, said China welcomes economic and trade cooperation between businesses from the two countries. Bilateral trade between China and Australia has been seeing steady growth on an annual basis. During the first quarter of the year, total imports and exports between the two sides rose nearly 20% on a yearly basis to over 403 billion yuan or $58 billion. Meanwhile, Australia's exports to China rose nearly 20% to 270 billion yuan in the same period. China's total investment in Australia rose 143% last year to $1.4 billion, the first increase in 6 years. Now, to understand more about the complementary nature of the bilateral trade between China and Australia, we're joined by Lin Duo, a research fellow of the Department for Asia-Pacific Studies at the China Institute of International Studies. Professor Lin, thank you so much for joining us. Let's start with the recent trip made by the Australian delegation. What does it indicate about the current state of affairs between the two nations?
Good evening, Michelle. The increasing visits by Australian delegations to China have sent two positive signals. The first one is that as a long-standing pillar of China-Australia relations, the restoration of economic and trade ties is a sign that a bilateral relationship as a whole is forging ahead on the right track. With visits by the business delegation and state premiers, there appears to be a bottom-up force at the Australian state and business level to break down barriers and underpin the restoration of China-Australian relations. And a second but equally prominent signal is that the world economy is recovering from an unprecedented pandemic. The tangible benefits from development of economy and trade obviously outweighs irrational geopolitical concerns, and this was reflected in recent successful visits by French and Brazilian leaders to China. China and Australia has once set a model for interaction between China and the Western developed countries. However, the former coalition Australian government engaged in microphone diplomacy against China and followed the United States in competing with or even containing China. Such deeds undermine the mutually beneficial China-Australia comprehensive strategic partnership on all fronts and has damaged Australia's national interests. And now it has been nearly a year since the Australian Labor Party took office. It is clear that the new government has adopted a more pragmatic approach to improve relationship with China.
Can you tell us a little bit about the complementary nature of the trade relations between China and Australia and what measures are being taken to strengthen them? Professor Lin, so tell us a little bit about the complementary relationship between the two sides.
China boasts labor resources, good yet affordable industrial products, and a huge domestic market. And Australia's comparative advantages mainly consist in capital, technology, and abundant natural resources. And these endowments create a strong trade complementarity in capital-intensive products and labor-intensive products between the two countries. And China also relies upon Australia's mineral resources and industrial raw materials. And since the free trade agreement between the two countries came into effect late 2015, bilateral trade have delivered huge benefits to the two peoples, but faced major obstacles in the past 5 years.
The Chinese market has been a significant one for Australia for the past years. Can you tell us the importance of this market with regard to economic growth and stability?
Trade ties and economic cooperation has long been a cornerstone to China-Australia relations, to say the least. For over a decade, I believe, China has been Australia's largest trading partner consecutively, and bilateral trade volume has climbed from less than $100 million half a century ago to around $230 billion before the pandemic. And China has been Australia's largest export market and its largest source of imports, creating a huge trade surplus and a large number of jobs for Australia. And more prominently, China has a growing and large-scale middle-class population. As pandemic-related trade and travel policies shifted, China's huge market for wine, lobster, beef, and other products will mean tangible profits for Australian producers. And China's tourists and overseas students to Australia are expected to grow. And also, Chinese manufacturers are in a position of importing Australian coal, lithium, and other mineral products.
Now, can you give us some insights on the investment prospects and business opportunities between China and Australia? What potential areas of growth exist and what challenges lie ahead?
After the leaders' meeting last November and the Australian foreign minister's visit to China last December, high-level dialogues no doubt laid a solid foundation for bilateral trade and investment relations to bounce back. And the latest data showed that China's imports from Australia in the first quarter of this year grow a lot on a year-on-year basis. However, the Australian Labor government had not yet lifted some irrational hurdles on Chinese investment by its predecessor upon so-called national security concerns. And this will continue to affect the confidence of Chinese investors in Australia. And also, some geopolitical groups like the AUKUS agreement appears to represent Australia's double-dealer stance towards China. What Australia does and what it says are somewhat contradictory. It reiterated the importance of recovering ties with China, but it actively promotes the AUKUS deal under US pressure to target China. China's business and investment interest in Australia needs to be encouraged by the Australian side. The current recovery in China's investment in Australia is a hard-won outcome, which should be cherished and further promoted. It is critical for Australia's decision-makers to have a rational and balanced attitude toward China.
All right, thank you so much for your insights. Lin Duo, a research fellow of the Department for Asia's Pacific Studies at the China Institute of International Studies. You're watching Global Business, still to come. Swiss lender UBS said on Tuesday that it expects to complete the takeover of rival Credit Suisse in the second quarter.
.360-degree profiles of industry movers and shakers, tech mavericks, and policymakers. We drill down on their success. We ask how they set strategy and how they navigate in an increasingly competitive market. Real talk, real business. Join the conversation. Biz Talk, only on CGTN.
UBS said Tuesday it will likely complete its takeover of stricken rival Credit Suisse in the second quarter as the bank posted an underwhelming first quarter net profit of $1 billion. All eyes were on whether Switzerland's biggest bank is strong enough to carry through its forced alliance with Credit Suisse. Analysts polled by the Swiss financial newswire AWP expected UBS first quarter net profit to tick in at around $1.7 billion, down from $2.1 billion a year ago. Though it did manage to rack up a $1 billion net profit for the first 3 months of 2023, UBS said it has seen strong client inflows as it prepared to integrate the country's second largest bank. The bank says its diversified and capital-generative business model allowed it to be part of the solution in a critical moment for the Swiss and global financial systems. Embattled U.S. lender First Republic Bank says its deposit fell 40% during the first 3 months of the year. The bank, however, said deposits have since stabilized. CGTN's John Terrett has more from New York.
Earnings from the regional banks that have come in for the first quarter so far have been mixed. Last week, Western Alliance, a bank thought to be about to go over, turned in figures that were pretty good. Their shares were up 24% last Wednesday. Deposits lower, they said, by 11% in the first quarter, but up by $2 billion in just the month of April at that point. And so after the closing bell on Monday comes First Republic. Now, this is the chief bank that has people worried at the moment. First Republic is based in San Francisco, and the earnings in the end were mixed, although pretty good on the face of it. The revenue came in at $1.21 billion, not $1.15 billion. Earnings per share, $1.23, not 85 cents. But then it gets worse. The deposits between the fourth quarter and the first quarter at First Republic were down by 40.8%, almost 41%. That's $72 billion. As a result, the shares have been tanking after hours on New York Stock Exchange. In the grey market, when I last looked, they were down 17%. All this suggests the banking crisis in America at the regional level is at least contained for now, but everybody assumes that another shoe will drop. They just don't know when or where. John Terrett, CGTN, on the trading floor of the New York Stock Exchange.
Moving on to some other business news from around the world. The UK government borrowings rose 15% on a yearly basis in the 2022-23 financial year. The higher borrowings were mostly driven by massive energy market subsidies. The European Central Bank is likely to increase deposit rates at its next policy meeting on May 4th to curb inflation, according to economists polled by Reuters. The loan delinquency ratio among South Korean banks continued to rise in February, meaning they were dealing with a higher percentage of overdue loan payments. It happened despite the central bank's tightening measures since mid-2021. In Hamburg and Berlin, staff walkouts have led to cancellations of hundreds of flights, leaving passengers scrambling for alternatives. And they're being told more is yet to come. Trent Murray reports from Berlin.
We have got one very, very empty terminal, and that is because all departures from the capital's airport have been cancelled because of that strike action. Now, this is starting to feel very much like a familiar pattern in many ways for passengers here. We've had a number of these rolling strikes across transport networks in recent weeks and months. Just last week, in fact, Stuttgart, Cologne and Dusseldorf airports were forced to close for 24 hours. This disruption is only impacting departures from here. That is because security staff back there have walked off the job, and that means no passengers can go through to catch their flight. Some flights are arriving, however, but it's a difficult balancing act for many airlines trying to do the economics of this, because they may be able to fly passengers in, but they're then often forced to fly back empty planes to their base. Now, what we know is that Berlin Airport is not the only one being impacted. Hamburg Airport is also being hit by a separate walkout. Staff, it seems that there's still quite a gap between the two parties in this pay negotiation. You've got multiple unions covering different sectors of workers who are all trying to negotiate separately, but then striking at the same time in order to try and inflict maximum disruption on the travelling public and force more pressure on the management of some of these airports. With cost of living rising, they need more pay rises. Of course, caught in the middle of all of this, the travelling public, the message for them, well, this is just a quote, warning strike. I think a very clear sign that this is probably not the last day of disruption we will see at both airports and train stations here in Europe's biggest economy.
You're watching Global Business, still to come. China to replace PCR test requirement with antigen tests for inbound travelers.
The world economy as we know it is about to change. Global business reports highlight emerging markets, developing countries, and dynamic sectors worldwide. We feature top analysts and newsmakers to provide perspectives on every facet of business. From an on-the-ground perspective, we provide you with balanced and objective assessments. Fast, sharp, and insightful. Global Business. Only on CGTN.
China's foreign ministry says all inbound travelers will only need to show COVID-19 antigen test results taken within 48 hours before boarding flights starting April 29th, dropping the PCR test requirement. Take a listen.
All inbound travelers will only need to show COVID-19 antigen test results taken within 48 hours before boarding flights, starting from April 29. And at the same time, we remind travelers to do health self-monitor and self-management before traveling, strictly abide by Chinese and local epidemic prevention requirements, and ensure a healthy, happy travel and safe return to home. China will continue to scientifically optimize prevention and control policies according to the epidemic situation and ensure safe, healthy, and orderly exchanges between Chinese and foreign personnel.
China's transportation and tourism sectors are warming up for the upcoming Labor Day holiday, which will start on April 28th, 2 days earlier than usual. The railway network will be adding at least 1,500 passenger trains, hopefully enough to deal with the holiday travel rush. As for air traffic, over 6 million of domestic flight tickets during the 5-day holiday period have been sold, indicating that the market is catching up to pre-pandemic levels. Major booking sites in China are seeing similar pictures, if not better. The most popular destinations include Beijing, Shanghai, and some western cities like Xi'an and Chengdu. Next, we take a closer look at the steady recovery of China's consumer market, as well as some of the popular and limited edition products that are driving the rebound in Beijing this spring. Our Olivia He has the details.
Take a picture of cherry blossoms, purchase spring limited food, and go for camping. As the temperature warms up, the spring economy is also gathering momentum. In many coffee shops, cherry blossom flavored coffee and cakes are put in the most eye-catching places, and the price of the spring limited products is slightly higher than the regular ones.
Of course, it's not just about drinks. In many chain coffee shops, coffee mugs and other products come with distinctive cherry blossom patterns too.
We
launch limited edition products every spring. It's available from March to the mid of April. It's very popular and gets sold out in most stores.
In addition to coffee and tea shops, special spring products are commonly seen in Beijing's supermarkets as well.
I'm now at a Hema Fresh supermarket, and the first thing that caught my attention here is the huge barbecue area right next to the entrance.
With demand for outdoor activities such as camping booming in spring, sales of related products such as utensils for barbecue, oven baking trays, and various sauces are literally flying off the shelves here and at other department stores across the city.
Another thing that caught my eye at the stores was several packages in green and pink with words such as Spring Limited or Take Me Out for Spring Camping.
今年呢也是以结合茶的元素做了很多的西点。
Our Spring Limited bakery has different types of tea flavors, such as jasmine and Longjing tea. In Chinese culture, we drink green tea in spring, so the cakes are all made into different green tea flavors as spring special products.
Besides food, all kinds of daily necessities, such as shower gel, laundry detergent, toothpaste, etc., also have spring special series, and they are always put together in many stores for customers to choose. Spring Limited products are not only available in offline stores, but are easily found online too. Searches on e-commerce platforms with the keyword Spring Limited brings up all kinds of special products such as beauty makeup, stationery, accessories, etc. Olivia He, CGTN, Beijing.
China now has more than 240 million people with a higher education. The average number of schooling years for workers has reached about 14 years. With the rapid growth of the high-end manufacturing industry in the country, demand for workers with higher educational attainment is also rising rapidly. Zhang Shixuan has more.
It took this Shanghai-based new energy heavy truck component maker only 4 years to boost its production value from 30 million yuan to 650 million yuan. It was only able to do that by hiring more highly qualified engineers. Chai Yanan joined the company after getting her bachelor's degree last year.
I dreamed about being an engineer in college. Entering into the high-end manufacturing industry means I can grow quickly from a freshman to a skilled professional, and I can also get more knowledge of China's industrial development. I had 30 classmates. Most of them went into the new energy field.
Now, 60% of the company's employees are college graduates, and half of them have a master's or doctoral degree. That's an increase of 20% from a year ago.
China is expected to have 11.58 million college graduates this year, another record high. Premier Li Qiang earlier this year said that while this will put pressure on the job market, it will also invigorate society. He stressed that increasing schooling laborers will boost economic growth, which he called the talent dividend. But the question is, what will be the advantages of having talent like this, and which companies are in most demand for workers with a bit of extra education?
Last year, we mostly hire people with a bachelor's degree. This year, our focus is on those with a master's degree. We had a new factory put into operation in December 2022, working on gearboxes. So we have a large demand for talent with knowledge of gears and mechanical engineering. We need new graduates to help us get new ideas and conduct new research about key components.
Having acquired his master's degree a decade ago, Deng Jing decided to join the company to enter into the high-end manufacturing field just 2 years ago. His theoretical knowledge and experience is just what companies like Top Gear is looking for.
When I graduated in 2012, people rarely talked about high-end manufacturing. But since 2018, the concept has been popular. I entered this company because I wanted to go into a relatively advanced sector. In such an area, which has not been developing for very long, we need to combine our previous experience with new information.
The increasing demand for more highly skilled workers is spreading across the industrial world, as many have been moving towards smart manufacturing and new innovation. That shift is being felt by local human resources firm.
The commission volume from high-end manufacturing firms has been rising 20 or 30% every year. While this trend started with the mechanical sector, especially car manufacturing, later we found that even home appliance makers have been requiring employees with a higher education. They want people with at least a master's degree in craft process design. In recent years, semiconductor firms have been requiring those people to handle frontline work.
Song says he's also witnessed an increasing demand for people with a bachelor's degree and those who have received professional skills training during college. Such graduates are usually provided with 50% higher salary than ordinary undergraduates. Zhang Shixuan, ICS for CGTN, Shanghai.
During the 2023 China Green Company Forum, participants said that China has increased its investment in science and technology, education, and other fields in recent years, and the quality of its workforce has significantly improved. The participants agreed unanimously that talent dividend will provide strong impetus for China's development.
We are always talking about we need to have more efficiency improvement, which means we cannot afford the increased cost of those repeated work, actually the low value work. So how can we improve? We don't think actually that we will overall short of these workers. We just need more high value and high expertise workers, which could include the data scientist, the data engineer, and also the people actually who can be the translator to connect this business and digital.
每一年都1000万个受过教育的人进入。With
10 million educated people entering the job market every year, the talent pool is quite valuable to the world. Our company continues to focus on how to attract the best talent from China to join our global enterprise. In addition, China has a large population and a growing number of people who can consume and spend. From this perspective, foreign companies will continue to focus on the Chinese market.
外国企业继续会关注这个中国的市场。
In the heart of Jiangxi Province, Jinggangshan is known for its important role in China's modern history and as the cradle of China's revolution. Our reporter Ning Hong visited the city to learn more about its history and the Red Army's activities there.
This statue is called the Beginning of Victory. It is here in Jinggangshan mountain area where the Communist Party of China set up the first revolutionary base in rural area. Pioneers of China's revolution in Jinggangshan mountain have realized that the vast land that most people having their lives depending on are in the hand of few landlords. And this is making the farmers in rural area are in a position of being exploited and oppressed. And here are the tools and the marks of how the Communist Party of China is giving the lands back to the farmers. Farmers are exhilarated and happy to join the revolution. And here's a statue showing that they're holding the marks and marking their land for the first time in Chinese history. To better defend the results, the Communist Party of China has drafted its first land law here in Jinggangshan in 1928. And here's the law and also a copy of it. The road ahead is never clearly written there. It's the blood and sacrifice of martyrs and patriots which paved for victory. This is a cemetery built for martyrs who had given their lives in Jinggang Mountain. More people set out from here and never returned. Now this monument is standing alone on top hill overlooking the land they used to fight. A single spot here which lights up a rare fire in China. They said when a soldier fell, an azalea will grow. People made a song named Azalea to commemorate the deed of the Red Army, and people visiting here are still repeating the song.
And that will do it for this edition of Global Business here on CGTN. I'm Michelle Vandenberg in Beijing. Thank you for watching. Bye for now.